What do you not buy into what Antonio Brown is saying?
No, I do, but the end is near. I think we're seeing the end of an era. Their window is closing, and I think he's starting to be his mortality. He understands no Le'Veon Bell. Ben has teetered on retirement for the last couple of years. They have no defense. They can't stop anybody. They have to win a shootout. Ben's holding on to the ball, and when he does that, turnovers come, sacks come, and eventually concussions come.
Let me ask you about their defense, because we know what the numbers are. Up until Shazier got hurt, they were allowing 17 a game. Since Shazier got hurt, so the end of last year into this year, it's 28 a game. That is second worst in the league. Their rush defense in that stretch, third worst in the league. Their red zone defense is an abysmal, giving up touchdowns, 85% of red zone drives. That's worse than the NFL by far. But they've had an offseason to figure out the Shazier injury, and they've got personnel.
They don't have the cap space to fill it. Listen, whenever you're running a 3-4, you have to have an impact player at linebacker and at safety. When you think about all the great 3-4 defense, they even just look at the organization, the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, from James Ferrier to Larry Foote to Palomalu. Yeah. You have to have people that can navigate their zone type of scheme. And now what's happening is they can't get the pressure with the zone blitzing, and it's creating tremendous voids, and they can't stop the run. The first thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers have always been about was making you one-dimensional, and they can't do that right now.
Because they've got the other, because I'm glad you mentioned inside linebacker and safety, because the personnel everywhere else
is pretty damn good.
I like Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt.
Yes.
I like Bud Dupree, TJ Watt.
Bud Dupree has been a bust. I mean, you just have to put it where it is.
I think that's
listen.
Strong.
Would you call him James Harris?
No, but there's a gap between.
How many of those guys are there out there?
Would you call him Joey Peasy?
Would you
call him Joey Peasy?
No, he's not Joey Porter.
So they brought him in first-round draft pick to be an impact player. How many sacks? He's been a disappointment.
Okay, so maybe he hasn't been exactly what they hoped he would be. I think bust is too strong. But regardless, T.J. Watt has been an impact player. And so I like their personnel. I know they haven't had Joe Hayden, but what I'm not mentioning there are inside linebacker and safety. And you're saying for the defense they run, you were that type of defense very successful in, that 3-4, that's what they need. So maybe that might unlock part of the reason, because the defense doesn't have the personnel that says, even without Shazier, that they would be this bad.
Yeah, they're going to struggle with direct runs. That's runs in between the tackles. And, of course, those inside linebackers, they haven't found somebody to fill the Shazier void. Now, in terms of safety, they burned a first-round pick on Edmonds, the safety from Virginia Tech, but you saw him get stiff-armed by Kareem Hunt at the goal line on a receiving touchdown, and that was bad. So,
get off the club.
You know what you're dealing with, a guy that can't necessarily step in and be an impact player in the deep middle of that field. And, Nick, we talked about it earlier. If you can't control the middle of the field, it's going to be hard to play defense. That's exactly where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. So in terms of what they're going to have to do to win games as a team, their offense is going to have to win the day for them. That means being able to win shootouts. You're going to have to match points with a lot of teams. Now, your next 4 games, you're on the road at Tampa on Monday night. Then you've got Baltimore and Atlanta at home, and then on the road at Cincinnati before the bye week. Now, outside of Baltimore, you're not talking about murderer's row with those defenses. So maybe you can do enough. Go 3-1 during that stretch. Get to the bye week at 3-2-1. Give this team a chance to reset, and then, of course, get you an opportunity to be a few weeks closer to getting Le'Veon Bell back. Yeah. I think that's what this team has to focus on right now, because with all the distractions that's going on, this team has lost its focus and lost sight of the goal, which is to try to be one of those top 2 AFC teams and get a bye week in the first round of the playoffs so you can have a chance to compete for a championship.
They're done. They're done. This is the best we've ever seen of the Steelers. This era is over with. And Le'Veon Bell is the guy that closes the door. He's the guy that runs the clock out. He's the guy in the tough situations that you can give the ball to. He's going to find you 2 yards. They don't have a closer anymore. And without a closer, you can't be successful.
Well, Bell is going to come back. After the 10th game, he's got to come back because he's got to play 6 to get the accrued season.
But where does that put them?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They've got to buy themselves some time. That's why I'm saying you got to get to the bye week and try to reset this thing.
Did you think they were done last year after they not only lose to Chicago, but they get beat 30-9 to Jacksonville to fall to 3-2? Because Big Ben was old, not quite as old.
But they've lost their identity, and their identity that they were the bullies. And now they can't bully anymore. No, people don't respect them. It's not that fear factor when you go into Pittsburgh where you play the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know you can get the Ben if you play tight coverage and you just 4-man rush, he'll hold on to the ball. Antonio Brown is exceptional, but without Le'Veon Bell, they can't be impact because now you're not respecting the box. So now you're putting safeties over the top of Antonio Brown. You're mixing up the coverages. You're bracketing him, and you're manning up on Juju.
I think that I think we're going to look back on the beginning of this year similar to how we look back on the beginning of last year.
Agreed.
Say that last part again.
Tomlin is, I'm telling you, they're starting to think that the inmates are running the asylum. And it's been just too many things coming out of that locker room.
All right, well, listen, I understand that is one of the beliefs in the local media in Pittsburgh. I think that's an absurdity.
Yeah.
There's two coaches in NFL history who have won more games than Mike Tomlin through 11 years. There's 0 coaches in NFL history who have more 10-win seasons than Mike Tomlin through 11 years.
He's never had a losing season.
He's never had a losing season.
But listen, I was there when Brian Billett got fired. And, we had just had a successful season. He had just got an extension as well. But sometimes after 10 years, the message goes old. And he's speaking the same message. And listen, I love Tomlin.
You say that, Bart, but there's so much turnover in the NFL. I mean, you're only keeping guys around 4 or 5 seasons anyway. I look at Mike Tomlin's situation right now, and, yeah, it doesn't look good because you have a lot of guys that are creating distractions for your football team. But if you look at the landscape of the AFC, this team is right there in terms of talent and being one of the best teams in that conference. They just got to get focused and back on football.
Fool's gold, man.
Listen, I'm going to put this down as far as my prediction. We're going to look back and everything's going to be fine in Pittsburgh in 6 weeks. Week 1, they lose a game in Cleveland, or they tie a game in Cleveland where Big Ben turns the ball over 5 times. They were -5 in the turnover battle, and you're supposed to lose that game.
Yes.
Teams were going into that game 4-132-1 in those, or 4-132 in those situations.
Yeah.
They became the 1. Then they play Kansas City, which might be the best team in the AFC, and they scored. They
can't stop anybody either.
Okay, I understand Kansas City can't stop anyone, but that was
nobody
they were down,
can stop them.
Right, they were down 21-0. They tie the game, and they're without Le'Veon Bell. The Steelers are going to win double-digit games. They are going to win their division, and by the end of the year, they are going to have Le'Veon Bell back. Like, that doesn't mean that they are going to have a good enough defense to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean they're going to make the Super Bowl, which they haven't done since the 4th year Tomlin was there. But the idea that the era is over, the era might be over at the end of this year. I don't think the era is over yet in Pittsburgh.
They've had 3 coaches in the last 50 years for the Steelers. It's not like Mike Tomlin is on the hot seat, although this is a really bad look right now.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.